Hello, everybody. We're live with our first Arrrgh Booked Book Club meet of the year. I'm very excited to be talking about Sharon McMahon's book, The Small and the Mighty, with Tanya today. So, Tanya, what did you think of the book?
I loved it. I thought it was really engaging. I mean, like at the beginning, I didn't know where we were going exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a little bit like disoriented. But the moment she started tying in people together, that's when I really started to enjoy the book. I thought that was like what, like a quarter of the way through or so, where
Mm-hmm.
like all the stories started interleaving a little like that. I thought she did really well throughout the rest of the book. I think I enjoyed the second half of the book better than the first,
I
for
agree
whatever
with
reason.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
like it,
liked the second half more.
yeah, it really like I don't know. It felt more emotional to me. Maybe because it was more recent events, like
Mm-hmm.
more close to my time. But it also just felt less um at the beginning, I think some of the stories were a little slow. Like,
Yeah.
so it took me a little while to get to the end of each chapter because I was listening to the whole thing. I didn't have a paper copy, which I did start taking notes on my phone though, because I was like, I'm gonna lose track of who these people are. Because some of them I knew, like I would say most of them I knew or had heard of, but a few of them I hadn't ever heard of,
Yeah.
which was cool. And so I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done, especially for a topic that can be kind of dry, like where you go into it and you're like, I'm totally in it to win it, and then you're like, I don't want to read this anymore.
Yeah.
Like that happens in
Yeah.
some.
Like I read a fair amount of history books,
Yeah.
and I thought this one was extremely readable. Like
Yes.
I think this could be something anybody could pick up and get
Hmm.
something out of.
Yeah.
She has a really great ability, I think, to tell a story
Yes.
and to keep you engaged in that story over the course of an
Hmm.
entire book. Like I feel like she could probably have just picked one of these people and written an
Yeah.
entire book about them.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think she also does a good job of keeping like the reader in the story, like she's talking
Mhm.
just to you. So like when she'll say her little things, like as you can imagine, or to no one's surprise, like
Yeah.
it's
Like you
always
can
like,
tell she's a podcaster because I felt like I was listening to a podcast and I was
yes,
like, oh, okay, that's what we're
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a very, very well organized podcast with humor. So I think it would be a great book for like high schoolers,
I agree.
to read.
I kept
So
sitting there thinking, how can I fit this into level 12? Do I have space? And I don't,
maybe
but
you could do
I
it
could
like
maybe find a way.
interspersed,
Yeah. Because I'm
or maybe
like,
some
okay,
of the
can I
chapters.
really justify one more book? I feel
You
like
could
level
do just
12 has so many
sections.
books.
Yeah. I haven't looked at level 12 yet.
There's a lot going on in that level. So I'm like, can I fit this? But I think I'm going to read it with Regina no matter what, because I think she'd like it
Hmm.
and find it interesting. So she likes stuff like that too, like where it's like focused on an individual person and like expanding on what they did in their life. So I think she'd get a lot out of this. Um,
Normally, I listen to NPR on the way to my school drop off for my ninth grader. And I was like, what grade is he in now? But like NPR has been a little heavy in the last couple of weeks. So
yeah.
I switched off to this, like, just to like start him off in a positive way for the day. And it's been a good, like, listen, I think, too. So you could probably surreptitiously inject it into car trips and stuff for people who want to add it into their kids' repertoire.
Yeah. And I like that she was able to write a positive book while still maintaining like these are the things that these people had to deal with at the time and they were
Mhm.
able to overcome, but like this is how they did it. I don't know. I really liked it a lot, the way she made me feel like I could do something, like I could
Yeah.
be inspired to do something small with my life that would make an impact.
Yeah. And none of these people had it easy, you
No.
know. So that also is something. Um, I think that in some of the earlier stories, that is true that I felt like, we could all be small and mighty, but I was also like, I feel very inferior to some of these people in terms of like just how much they had to deal with and how they just kind of stood up and did the thing anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive. Like when I complain about things like my first world problems, I was
Oh,
like,
definitely. I think it put into perspective too. Like if they could go through all of that, like I can do something.
Exactly.
Because my life is infinitely easier.
Yes. Yeah. Infinitely easier. Even when she was talking about, I can't remember exactly who the women who set up the schools out west, and
Oh,
like they just
yeah.
showed her show up, her and her daughter, and they're like,
Mm.
I guess we're gonna move into this shanty in between this like brothel and this bar
Oh my gosh.
and
I
start a
know.
school.
That is very impressive.
Yeah.
Like
So
all of them did such almost mundane sounding things if you were just told like, oh, she was a teacher. But like they had to do so much to make what they were doing even work. I don't know. I was captivated while I was listening to this, just thinking about how hard their lives were and how much they accomplished. And I don't know. I really liked it.
and to be women who accomplished that much too.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a meme I saw that was like, people are asking me how I got radicalized. I'm like, have you seen the comments in the thread of any in response to anything any woman says ever? Like
Yeah.
now, in 2025. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, 18 teas or whatever, like how you like deal all the time. I thought group of people.
Oh. Tanya, you're freezing up on me.
Part of the screen again. Hello to anyone who's still there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just a little bit glitchy. Tanya, do you want to try to leave and come back and see if we can unfreeze you?
I don't know.
Okay.
Or what happened?
I don't know what happened there, but you're working now. Okay.
I don't have any issue with my internet. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know. Sometimes things are just glitchy.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So I did find a few little like book club questions that we could use for discussion. So, did this book inspire you to take any actions in your own life, no matter how large or small your personal sphere of influence? And if so, what?
I think that the idea of being able to do something every day has been in everybody's mind recently, in 2025. So I don't think it changed that, but it definitely gave me this sensation of like progress is a forward marching thing, and even when there's these like little like, extinction bursts of activity and stuff against it, I think that it helps to remember that it is still like a giant leap forward, like even with what is happening today, it's still so much further than where we were a relatively short time ago, and I do think that it helps to hear stories of people who stood on the side of right whenever you hear it in any way, because like when she was talking about Booker T. Washington and stuff, there are difficulties in any given time of like how right can you make this action, right? Like progress is meaningful even when you can't make it perfect, right? I think
Yeah.
I think that idea of like, I don't know, seeing people come together for like some sort of collective action and just to take those incremental steps and have them be meaningful in the end is helpful. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I
Like
agree.
suffrage
Yeah.
took so long. Yeah. Like whenever I hear about the credit card thing and like it was 1984 or something, when you could get like a credit card without a mail signature, like that is my lifetime, right? Like that is insane to think about. So, I mean, maybe it is good that in this time we are reminded not to take everything for granted, you know, and to like stay vigilant to what we can do to make sure like we don't lose rights.
Yeah.
So,
It definitely made me want to like do something. Trying to think like, what can I do? So I'm just like focusing on build your library. What can I do with that? Like, how can I use that? So that's where I will
I think
double
being in
down.
any, yeah, I think if we try to double down in whatever area of interest we genuinely have, like where we can bring our skills to bear, I mean, that's probably the
Yeah.
best. Instead of feeling like scattershot, you know.
Yeah.
So
Because it can be maddening. Like there's too much happening and I'm just this one tiny person. What am I supposed to do? So like, yeah, having the like inspiration to just focus on what you're capable of. What is your gift that you can bring to the world? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, you know, with your curriculum and stuff, like I think it's so helpful to offer up education, right? Like, I mean, so many, like I learned so many things that from reading, like even like level 5 and level 6 and stuff like that, I wouldn't have known, you know. I think that, yeah. I mean, this idea of shutting like the people in our lives that don't agree and stuff, I think one of the worst parts about it is that you don't have the opportunity to like engage them in education, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh, it's hopeless, they're in a thing, like, you know, all of this stuff about like how your brain actually resets and doesn't want to accept new information and stuff. I think on some level that is probably true, but I also think it's sort of like that 0% chance versus a 1% chance argument, you know, like if you completely shut the door, then there's a 0% chance that these people are going to be exposed to this type of information. But if you leave it open, then there's maybe, even with all of this like bias and even with, you know, the walls that we build up around ourselves, there's a 1% chance that something will break through, you know, like some element of connection will come through. So
yeah, I read a book called High Conflict last month that talked a lot about that and about how like we need to stop having an us versus them attitude and find a way to have conversations with those people and remember that they're not as different from us as we might think they are based on our ideas and the way we relate to them. But like having conversations with them, you might not change their mind immediately, but you might plant a seed and you might have more than one conversation with them. And eventually maybe they'll start to think about things a little bit differently. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think loving people, right? Like, and having connection with people on the opposite side of your like ideological spectrum, no matter how hard it is, I think can be helpful. You know, like I don't know. I like vacillate between, I think it's been a lot harder to hold space for people after this election than it has been like in other contentious ones. There's a lot of reasons for that, globally, locally, all of it. But I think that, I mean, I am trying, you know, like I am trying because I feel like if you stop talking to people who really like to move society forward in like some sort of way, like need to like come to the middle at least, then, you know, you've lost. I mean, there's no point in me continuously harping just to people who already are in agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to my mom about that because she posts a lot of memes and things, and I'm just like, who are you talking to? like what is your goal here? And she's like, I don't know. I just have to do something. And I'm like, I know, but like, it's a lot.
I mean, it's all a lot, but like, I think everyone's entitled to do what they want, really.
Mm-hmm.
I just think in our real life, social media has its own construct, but I think in our real life, like this idea of like, in the story she tells in this book too, there's so many people who like do the, like today's version of cold calling, you know, like you just show up, you're like, hey, like this is what I'm planning to do, or this is what I think could happen, and like, can you help me make it happen? And I think that sometimes it's the least likely people who might actually come across and help, you know, or like build something. I was a little sad because there was one follower that I had on Instagram who was different from me politically. And I remember in the past she'd said like, oh, we should talk about this or do like a live or something about how like you can be like civil and like, you know, all of this stuff. And talk about other things, you know, like you can agree on other things, like let's say like how you parent or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm totally open to that, you know, but then like, since all of this has happened, her reactions to so many of my posts have been so, a little bit full of vitriol that like a little bit of sarcastic, it's sort of like cushioned in sarcasm, but it's still pretty harsh. And I'm like, this is unproductive. Like, you know, like, I don't know that this is really exemplifying what you talked about earlier, but, yeah, I think everyone's got a lot of emotions going on right now. I think this is a good one to read. Like a lot of people have been shying away from political books right now. Like they just sort of need a break from all of it. But I think if you want to be inspired by like what the country could be, this is a good one to read. Like
I agree. I think this was a good choice to start the year with because I think we needed some kind of positivity. Like I needed to hear something that would make me feel a little bit better about where we're at right now and like where we could be going, because I don't know. I just feel like my whole, like everything has shut down since November. It's just like been in such like struggle mode since then, just trying to figure out how to like function on a basic level. So I definitely needed something like this to pull me out of that a little bit.
I mean,
and remind me that like my life isn't actually that hard.
I think that was a huge part of especially the first half of the book for me. I was like, okay, like, you know, it's going to be okay. I can do the things. So I loved how she called everybody by their first names for the majority of the chapter. I kind of
it made
like
them feel like normal people, not like
like it definitely did. And even like little struggles, like the health struggles or like scheduling or transport and random things like that. I'm like, this is like real life. Like they did this in the midst of real life. So.
Okay, the next
I think
question.
she would have done an amazing job with the book we read last year about the woman who revolutionized like the whole asylum thing for women.
Yes.
She would do an amazing job with like a story like that, because I think she would have taken those personal details of like, you know, that the horrific nature of like what's inside a place like that, but also like the interpersonal connection she formed with patients and things like that, and give it a whole flavor. So.
I agree. Yeah. The next question is, are you optimistic or pessimistic about America's ability to change? And has your view changed at all as a result of reading this book? I think we've always been like one step forward, two steps back. Like that's just how it's always been. And I don't see that changing necessarily. But I do feel like this made me see that, okay, well, even if it doesn't feel like the progress is happening at the speed I want it to happen, it is still happening.
I mean, I agree. I think part of what gives me pause is just that the United States is really built on checks and balances. Like if you had to say like there's one really extraordinary thing about the structure of the government, it's that tripod. And having that tripod thrown out of whack in current times,
Mm-hmm.
that gives me anxiety,
Yes.
like it really does, because I think that is new, because I can't remember a time before where you had such a slant to like
Mm-hmm.
the three legs, all
Yeah,
three.
I agree.
And so that's what gives me pause. But I do think there's always a reaction to progress, right? Particularly social
Mm-hmm.
progress. There's
There's
this,
always been a backlash every time
yeah.
something is improved. So like I expect that,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's still hard to see.
Yeah.
It's
And I
hard
think
to watch it
also
happen.
it is, but I think like the accessibility of information in the last like 10 years has increased like exponentially increased the reactionary anger and like hatred of like marginalized groups, particularly in
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ communities, because the exposure has been so much greater, And I
Yeah.
think that on the one hand, that's great. And on the other hand, I think it has really fueled the fire in a way that maybe would not have happened in an organic fashion like 20 years ago, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When you hear about things happening in like the cities or, in cosmopolitan areas and you don't really see it, it's one thing. But if you have it in your phone all the time,
Mm.
then you start to feel like all of these things are somehow dangerous to your children because they don't align with your religious views or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it is what the world is. So it's just
Yeah.
another prong of what we have to deal with. But
It's the whole thing of the internet being a blessing and a curse. Like I don't know
yeah,
that I would want to live without the internet, but also I can definitely see that it has done damage, social media
yeah.
specifically. But like, yeah, just
There's
it's a
so many great things
challenge.
about the internet that like, so when I was
Yeah.
listening to this audiobook and I get to pick up line, I would look up the people, like on my
Mm-hmm.
phone and like just read like in more detail about like where they were from, on how this happened. I'm the type of person who like I like to see it, like I
Mm-hmm.
like to see the pictures, I like to see the words, and then it sort of gels in my mind. Um, and I started crying and this morning because I finished the book this morning, but I started crying with the chapter about the senators and the Japanese internment, and like just look at their pictures and like you can see like their childhood and now and like their friendship and all these things. And I don't know, I think that there's so many wonderful things about the internet, like it makes it so accessible. Like when you want to
Mm-hmm.
learn things, everything becomes
Yeah.
so easily accessible, but it also brings with it, a lot of room for error.
Mm.
So uh, what part of the book, before we go on to the next question, did you find the most like, I don't know, personally moving?
I really enjoyed the section about Claudette Colvin because I'd
Hmm.
heard of her before, but this is the
Yeah.
first time that I've heard like her story told,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
outside of just a snippet here and there. So I really found that very powerful that she was just this little girl. Like she was a
Hmm.
kid. And
Yeah.
like I was really moved by that chapter. Like having like she had such audacity to just stand
Hmm.
up and be like, no. Like I would
Yeah.
never as a teenager have been able to do something like that. So I loved hearing her story. I thought it was
I
very
agree.
moving.
I don't know that I would have had that kind of like, gumption. But
Mm.
I have you looked up her picture? She has such a baby face too.
She does. Yes, I
She
did.
looks
Like she's
like
a little baby.
she's like, she must have looked so young even at the age that this happened. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's impressive. So
Yeah, I'm just reading comments. Yeah, Ashley says, very concerned about the fragility of checks and balances right now. Yeah,
mhm.
I just saw Hank Green had a video talking about that. And like, he's one of the people that I look to for like
Mhm.
calm, like intelligence. And like,
Yeah.
if he's not worried, I won't be worried. And when he starts to be worried, now I know that I'm panicking.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The people
Yeah.
who have the receipts, the people who are like, I am putting the pieces together and I'm not liking
Yeah.
outcome.
When the people who never seem alarmed get alarmed, that's when I get anxious. Yeah.
It sounds interesting, that book that Natalie's mentioning, Leave Me Where the Light Is Ours.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. All of the stories about, like, you know, abuse covered up by the church are hard for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I could read them. I just find it so devastating. So. There was a I think I mentioned it before on this podcast or on our thing, but when we went to Close Up, it was like a program. I think it still runs in 8th grade where I think they take school groups and you go and you get press passes. I don't know if it's still happening, but we got real access to like a lot of things in DC. And we went into a hearing for child abuse, and I can't remember the details of it because I had to leave like in the middle. Like I had to leave the building. I was like, I'm going to vomit. Like I can't live in this. And granted, I was 13 at the time, but I was like horrified. And I remember in med school, you had to do like a rotation of like the child abuse division of peds, and it is too much. The people who work in that area are saints.
Yeah. So what did you think about how the book was structured? Did you find it easy or hard to follow?
I found it really easy to follow.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty easy read overall. Yeah. Like I liked how she kind of weaved in and out of stories to like bring them all together. Yeah.
I think it was, I would be so interested to see like when she came up with her ideas for her book, like her initial outline, like who was on the table and how she decided her mix. I think she did a great job because it was definitely a variety of stories, a variety of ways to like impact, you know, your world and really shape this country. Yeah, I think she did a great job with that. Like I found all the stories interesting. Like I said, I like the second half better. And I think it's because of all the interpersonal connections and probably because she had more information to work with, you know, in terms of making these stories personal. But
yeah, I would love to have her do like a part 2.
Yeah.
And like 12 more stories, because like I feel like there's so many people that most of us have probably never heard of. And yeah, I hope she does that. That would be amazing. What did you think about the author's interjections and commentary? Did you enjoy hearing her point of view, or do you prefer when nonfiction narratives stand on their own?
Oh, I loved her point of view.
Yeah, like, I feel like Sharon has a really distinct voice.
Yeah.
And I enjoy her commentary. I think it definitely adds to the story.
And I think she writes the story with a point of view. Like there's some historians who, I think everyone honestly writes with a point of view when they talk about history, whether or not, I think it's really hard to write sentences about difficult times in history without injecting some point of view. Even if you keep it totally factual, like the way you decide to structure what your topic sentence is and what your conclusion sentence is going to determine and define your bias. But I thought that she did a really good job of sticking to the thesis of the book, which is that ordinary people like rise up and do extraordinary things, you know, even in difficult circumstances. And I don't think that's like a partisan issue. Like I think her viewpoint was very much about like how people can make a difference for the, you know, the people in their community that they care about. And I don't think that's something that necessarily would offend anyone, you know?
Yeah.
I would hope. I mean,
And I really like too that it's focused on like little things that you can do in your community. Like these are not people who necessarily did anything huge, they did small things, and I think that makes it feel more realistic for us and what we can contribute.
Yeah.
And yeah, I listened to the audiobook too, and I thought she did a really good job. I really enjoy listening to Sharon talk. So I listen to her podcast sometimes. So like I enjoyed that she narrated the book. So
yeah, she's a person where you can hear her eyebrows. You know, you can hear the like slight.
I could see her
slight
face
looking,
while she was talking.
the side eye. Yeah, you can hear the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's very expressive.
Yeah.
Do you agree with McMahon that hope is a choice and not a feeling? And what does it mean to choose hope? And how can we do so in our day-to-day lives? I do agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I do agree that hope is a choice and that you can kind of force yourself into it if you try hard enough. Like, I am definitely more pessimistic overall about things. And so I definitely have to work at it to make myself feel hopeful. And yeah, I think you can choose to be hopeful.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important, like these people who create like the like create art and music and just like in the midst of like real unrest and real emotional upset, the people who can, you know, put things out there in the world that allow people to do things together. Like even that silly song that I posted yesterday, the we are living through a government, like, you know. Like,
I'm not going to even tell you how many times I listened to that yesterday.
I know. I did all my laundry folding to it. I'm like, at like full volume, and I was like, this needs to be put on Spotify immediately. Like the whole song needs to be done. But you know, it's
little things like that.
Like,
yeah, that
it's
make
little
me
things
feel
like that,
hopeful.
you know.
Like,
yeah, and even the memes and
there's
stuff. Like
still
some people have
beauty,
commented.
there's still silliness. There's, you know, people are
like
gonna
sometimes
be
you
people.
laugh. Yeah, you have to be able to do all the normal human things together, like, you know, share memes and pebble each other with like little songs and random things. But the people who create these things in the midst of it, I'm so appreciative too, because I'm like, you are saving the rest of us. Thank you so much for making me not jump off a bridge. So that is, yeah. I mean, I hope that I find a way to do something that is truly helpful to other people in the midst of all of it, you know? Like, I think one of the best things about this book is that, you know, like hearing so many different stories about so many different people who've done things and knowing that there's countless others that we're not hearing about. Like, every little thing matters.
I think even little things like this, like it doesn't feel like we're doing anything really important right now, but I think even just like coming together online to talk about a book is something. Like, I think we need to stop thinking in terms of like grand ambitions and just look at the little things that we can do when it's feels hopeless out there. Like, we can still come together and talk about books on the internet. We can still read. Like, I can still talk about the books that I think are important in my life and things like that. So like even those little things matter.
And even like now, I think especially like telling somebody, you know, you like the message on their shirt. Or there was a woman who like pulled up next to me and like honked her horn, and she like just wanted to tell me she liked my bumper sticker. Which, I mean, it's not like a hugely crazy bumper sticker, but it has like, it says thoughts and prayers, and then on the bottom it says policies and change, and thoughts and prayers are crossed out, and policies and change are circled. And she's just like, I love your bumper sticker. Just wanted to let you know. And like, I think little moments of connection like that can be very helpful when you feel like you're looking at people.
Alone.
Yeah, you're looking at people and you don't know exactly where they might be standing or how alone you are in a group. I think it helps to just know that there's, you know, I keep thinking about the numbers on the election and things like that, and just, I think it can feel really overwhelming as this like sort of barrage of like executive orders come out and things like that. And
Mm.
I really try to hold on to like how many people definitely did not vote for this, and then also how many people stayed home. Like, even no matter how much it might make me upset, like not everybody that I see in the street is like upset when they see that my skin is brown. You know what I'm saying? Like, not
Yeah.
everybody is thinking like, where do I actually come from and where do I belong, and things like that. So, you
Yeah.
know, little things.
The last question is just, do you agree that it is the small and the mighty who make America great?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. One of my
Yeah.
favorite things when I read about history is to find out like what ordinary people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to know what it was like to live in any given time period for just like the average person. And so things like this are definitely my favorite kind of history to read, just to
Yeah.
see like what was it like to be an average person, and what did they do with their lives, and how did they affect their neighborhoods and their communities and that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was
yeah.
always the most interesting thing to me too, when I was even like books like Little House on the Prairie and stuff when I was a kid. I think
Mm.
the reason that series resonated so much is because it was about like those real small daily
Yeah,
occurrences.
they were just regular people living
Yeah.
normal lives. Like, yeah,
Like,
I
how do you
agree.
hang
I used to love
herbs
those
and
books.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, and like filling up the pig bladder and having that be the ball. Those were the
Mhm.
little details that really like made those stories, you know, like stick out in your head. Like, how did you
That
get
and
from
Little
like
Women.
you brush
Little
your teeth?
Women for me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Loved
Like,
that. Still
that was
love that.
such a detailed book. Like,
Mhm.
about the small, tiny things, like that attic and stuff that they would hang out in. Like, you could really feel, like
Yes.
that walk, and the seasons changing and like exactly
Mhm.
what they wore and the wrappers and the this and that, like everything in a very like
Mhm.
tangible way. Yeah. It's part of the reason why I like Emily Dickinson poems too, because even though she talks about very philosophical ideas,
Yeah.
she'll also talk about like these very little things, like the windowsill, like
Mhm.
like the way the
She
glass
feels like
looks.
a real person, which I think
Yeah,
is just, I don't know, makes it more meaningful to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I thought this was a great history book. I really did. I thought it was
Mm.
entertaining and like for me it was a 5-star read because it was so enjoyable and a topic that
Mhm.
is often not. I think it's hard to write a history book and keep it like engaging the whole way through, particularly when you do diverse stories, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
Usually somewhere along the way it feels like I just have 5 more people to get through,
Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, it does. So I really appreciated how she brought these people to life in such a meaningful way without
mhm,
making it boring at all. Like, I was
yeah.
entertained the entire time. And I read it so fast. I started it at the beginning of the week, thinking it might take me the whole week to get through, being a nonfiction
Mhm,
book, and I flew through it. I was like, oh no, I
yeah.
finished it too soon.
Yeah, I saw that it was your first completed one, right?
Yeah.
This month. So, no, it was very good. I loved it. I think whenever I start a nonfiction book that's about a disjointed, not disjointed, but like about different people, I'm
Hmm.
always a little bit like, when I read them on my own, like they are often books that get put on the shelf, and it's not like I definitely don't want to finish it. It's just that I don't. Like I'll start them and then they're just there to be like, the filler for when I pick it up again. And like sometimes I don't pick it up again, because there's a million other books. So
Hmm.
this one is not that way. So I think if anybody picks up this book, they'll just read it through.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, it's very
So,
easy to keep reading. Like, I kept thinking, oh, I'll just do a chapter. I'll just do a chapter
mhm.
tonight. And then I was like 4 chapters later, like, oh, oops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think that I loved the stories at the beginning about the suffragists too, because
Mm.
I
Hmm.
haven't ever gone into that in too much depth. I mean, I know it for like American history, but like I've never studied any one of them in any particular,
Yeah, we've done women's suffrage. We did a bunch of that last year because Regina just got really into it. So we read a whole bunch. We watched a movie. So I was really familiar with Inez.
I loved how she. Oh yeah. So I had realized when I looked her up that I had seen her in other things about suffrage because of her whole Gibson girl look. But she, which is hilarious. 100 years later, you're still famous because of how you look in some random person's head. But I loved how she related it to Mary Poppins and the mom in Mary Poppins. Picture it. You got the purple, gold, and ivory sashes and the marching and the excitement, and it was interesting. So, what is up next for us?
We are reading I Who Have Never Known Men.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Jacqueline Hartman. I'm really looking forward to this. I've heard so many people talk about this book. I still don't really know what it is or what it's specifically about because I'm really trying hard not to spoil anything. But I've heard so many people talk about it being their favorite book of the year, that they love it. So my expectations are high.
Yeah. And when was it published? It was published.
It's not new. Yeah.
No, it's not new. So I want to say the 70s. Am I wrong? Or was it
I'm trying to find it in here somewhere. My goodness. I'm seeing 1995. So yeah, it's definitely an older book.
Yeah.
But it's not one I ever heard of before, this past year. I feel like it just exploded for some reason. I don't know. But I've been hearing about it so much. So I was very intrigued and excited that it was on your list.
Have you know why I said the 70s? Because I definitely have that, I'm in my 40s disease of thinking that 20 years ago is always the 70s and not the 90s.
No.
Which is right, or not even the 90s now.
Did you just mute yourself? Looks like your mic is off. Did your earbuds die? Well, why don't we go ahead and wrap this up then? And we'll be back next month. Tanya and I will have to figure out the date because I don't know if we want to do the first Saturday or not. Since the first Saturday is the 1st, we might need to push it to the 8th again. So I will consult with Tanya about that and I will let you guys know. But we'll be putting up the info for I Who Have Never Known Men in the book club chat later today so that if anyone has already started reading, you guys can hop in and talk about it. So thank you so much for coming today and chatting with Tanya and I about The Small and the Mighty. I think we had a really great discussion. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you guys next month. So happy reading. Bye.
Bye, you guys.